Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Hi, Maricella. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello. Last we convened on the podcast a week ago, we were ready to start the year off at a fast-paced run. And as you're training for the marathon. How are you still feeling that way? Do you still have the momentum going?
Yes. Well, it depends on what area of my life you're asking. Work, I'm already tired, but we know January is very busy for us, so it's normal. But I still have the momentum. I'm still training. The half marathon, the Miami half marathon, is in less than a month, so I have to get that done, and then I come back, and a month later I'm doing the New York City half marathon. So running, and then just trying to like not take everything too seriously, but to really feel good. So even with my training, I'm trying to take it at a pace where I feel good and I remember why I'm running, which is because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel energized and helps me release all these endorphins and all that good stuff, versus making it a chore of I need to train to finish this ridiculous goal I've set for myself.
I think that's a really important perspective because, especially now at the beginning of a new year where goals are being talked about left, right, and center. And sometimes that thing you aspire to be can be kind of the weight that holds you back, depending on, how much it overtakes your life, and those goals should be things we are excited about doing. We're inspired or energized. And when it starts to kind of feel like a burden, then we're less likely to accomplish those goals, which leads to its own frustrations with not accomplishing the goal. So I think that's a fantastic advice and perspective, Maricella, around, just lean into it, enjoy it, and, have fun while you do it.
Yeah, that's my coach is the one that tries to get me to understand that, because I'm a Virgo, for those of you who like all these astrology stuff like I do. I know I'm very basic.
Maricella, no one would call you basic.
I mean, I do like true crime and astrology and rosé.
Rosé all day.
So just leave it at that. Anyway, I'm a Virgo, so I'm very, very hard on myself. I tend to try to be very perfectionist and compete with myself. So I tend to put those burdens, like no one says I need to run a certain pace mile except me. So I'm trying to give myself the leeway that if my body feels like walking today, it will walk today. And if my body feels like being fast today, it will be fast today. But at the end of the day, everything is okay because I'm getting up and doing the thing.
That is inspiring. And I love that. And it reminds me of some articles I've been reading lately. There's been a lot of firsts, and I bring that up because it's this mentality that you have of like, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to go after it. And clearly you push yourself. You're driven, and it's exciting to have this conversation where there's not one right way to do it. Right. To achieve our goals, to go after things. There's many ways to do it. And it's about how you have that support getting there. You have fun. You're able to be honest about it. And I say there's been a lot of firsts because I've been reading all of these great, inspiring stories the past couple of weeks. I'm, love the news, and especially the feel good stuff, because sometimes the news can be quite not feel good and quite daunting. But I don't know if you had heard, Maricella, but two big wins. We have Harvard student newspaper, which is almost 150 years old, is getting its first Latina president. So that's really exciting. This student one, I never know if we celebrate these. I mean, of course we celebrate this, and we're incredibly excited for Raquel Cornell Uribe. Maricella, you might have to say that better than me.
I was waiting to see if you wanted me to say it.
Yeah.
Raquel Coronel Uribe.
You did it so much better. But we're very excited for her and for her success. But definitely makes you kind of be like 148 years, and this is the first Latina president of a student newspaper at Harvard. But also we have Jessica Watkins, who is going to make history as the first Black woman on the International Space Station. And just these stories warm my heart and make me so happy. And we know that these individuals have worked hard, just as you are working hard, Maricella, to get where they want to go. And you can't ever do that alone. So it's about the support and the champions, and we are being your champion from afar, Jessica and Raquel. We are cheering you on.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's heartwarming, but at the same time, it's like mixed emotions. I don't know if it's the sarcastic in me, but yeah, it's very exciting to see things changing or to see new glass. God, I hate the word glass ceiling. It's exciting to see new barriers being taken down, but it shouldn't take this damn long. So hopefully we can see more firsts and more seconds and more thirds coming up, and we don't have to think about it in this way. Did you see also that New York NYPD is going to have its first female commissioner?
I did. I've been watching that, and it's exciting. Yeah, I mean, it is. Listen, we're coming out of this time. I'm not even coming out of this time, but we've been through this time where there's, certainly a fair share of articles about the impact of the pandemic on women and women in the workplace, losing their jobs, opting out of the workforce, like really feeling overwhelmed with home and professional, responsibilities, and so on and so forth. And so when you can then celebrate these successes, it's hopeful. And it's exciting, and I'm certainly love seeing women in all of these important places. We're talking about media, we're talking about space and policing, and all of those are areas that have also been addressed in the past, couple of years, where there's need for more work to be done. And I believe that women are the ones who are going to make that happen.
Well, think about space. Was it last year that we were seeing, or 2 years ago that we were seeing how they didn't have even the correct
spacesuits
for women.
I know, they didn't come in the right sizes. Yeah. But I also love Maricella, and I just noticed this. I was thinking about the roundtable next week, and for our listeners, you may have heard us talking about our weekly roundtables at Ellevate, and we do this every week. There's a set topic that an expert peer is going to tee up the conversation, but then we always go into small groups to bring that topic into our own lives, to really walk away with a clear action plan that you carry with you for the year. I mean, I'm constantly leaning back on conversations that I've had throughout the year that continue to help me in my career and my life. But it's the highest ROI on my time that I have found, where I'm able to really take someone's knowledge and inspiration and expertise and put that to my own situation in life and feel like I'm making progress. So this upcoming week at the Executive Roundtable, we're tearing down your wicked walls of resistance. And as we're talking about tearing down barriers here with some of these successes and wins and going for your goals, it feels like a really important conversation to tee off the year with, to break down those walls of resistance and to go after your goals.
So that would be today, right? That's today at 1?
Oh, I guess so, yes.
So the Executive Roundtable is Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Ellevate Network. And this week on the Rising Leaders Roundtable, actually, we're going to be talking about secrets of neuro leadership to reach your goals. I'm really excited. Maureen, who's our guest expert, will be taking us on a wild ride to how our brain works when we're really trying to set intentions and change things in our lives for the better, and how to get better at being more resilient so that we can be better leaders and reach our goals. So I'm like very, very, very exciting. I love the Rising Leaders Roundtable. I host those Thursdays at noon Eastern, and the group is so great. Like the last year, like getting to know these group of people who are all there, and every week we have new faces, so it's very welcome group. But it's so nice to know that we're all kind of facing similar challenges and we can help each other get through them. So I love it. I hope some of you can come to either this one this week or the one that we're hosting next week on Thursday, January 20th. Kristy, can you put it on your calendar? You need to be there because it is on saying no.
Oh, yes. Yes, I will be there.
An
Absolutely.
ongoing joke here between me and Kristy, but I am her no coach. She needs to take more time for herself and not say yes to everything.
Yes, I'm going to ellevatenetwork.com right now to register for that, because that is certainly something that I need. And thank you for holding me accountable, Maricella.
And you know who's going to be the guest expert leading us in that one?
Who?
Someone you love.
There's so many people I love. You?
Well, thank you. But no, Kelly Wingo.
Oh, I love Kelly Wingo. Yeah, I do love Kelly Wingo. Yes. Oh, that's exciting. Kelly Wingo was on our podcast in, I want to say maybe 2020. And she focuses on building an entrepreneurial culture within your organization. She's phenomenal. And now you definitely have sold me. I will be at that roundtable.
Yay. Hope some of you can make it too. So knowing when and how to say no, Rising Leaders Roundtable next Thursday, January 20th at noon Eastern. Go to EllevateNetwork.com to register.
Perfect. And now let's get to today's podcast interview. We have a great guest, Scout Sobel. She is, if you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, yes, Scout is named after that character, but she's just fantastic. She's honest, she's real and vulnerable. She's the founder of Scout's Agency, the co-host of the popular OK Sis podcast, and the best-selling author of The Emotional Entrepreneur. And Scout shares just a wealth of experience and insights on building businesses, on leaning into your own health and well-being, and leaning on others along the way. So it's a great conversation. I can't wait to hear what all of you think about it. We'll be posting it on all social media channels, so comment, tell us your thoughts. We'll also be sharing those articles we talked about today around those great wins in Harvard student newspaper and the International Space Station, but we know that there's others. There's a ton of wins we want to celebrate, so share the wins that inspire you. We want to celebrate them too and amplify that story so it stops being the first and we get into the many. This is the time for that to happen. Hello, Scout, and welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to get into this conversation with you.
Yes, I have no doubt this will be a fantastic discussion, but I wanted to get us started setting the stage and letting our listeners know a bit more about you and your story. So would you mind sharing who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, the Spark Notes version of all of this, the elevator pitch, so to say, is that I am Scout Sobel. I am the founder and CEO of Scout's Agency, which is a female-focused PR agency that specializes in getting women as guests on podcasts. I am the co-host of OK Sis podcast with my sister, the host of Scout podcast, and the best-selling author of The Emotional Entrepreneur. And how I got to where I am today is a very convoluted, large detour type of history where I had my first depressive episode at the age of 14 and was formally diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 20 and had to drop out of college, was placed into an outpatient program, inpatient, I had my, fair share of psychiatric medication experimentation, therapy, all of the things. And what really, really allowed me to finally flourish and find my purpose and be able to be a functioning person in society that was working towards a goal while also feeling safe in her emotions was entrepreneurship. So I found entrepreneurship at the age of 22 and have been chasing it ever since. I really believe that it is through entrepreneurship that my mental illness dance is a nice dance instead of the not so nice dance. So that's a little bit about how I got to where I am today as far as the entrepreneur aspect. But the podcast aspect really started when I started podcasting with my sister at OKSIS, and I very quickly realized the power of the medium and have made it my career purpose to make sure or to help facilitate as many of those conversations between female entrepreneurs, leaders, coaches, authors, all of that onto podcast episodes.
Thank you for sharing that story. I'm jealous that you work with your sister. I wish that I worked with mine. Although,
be careful what you wish for, Kristy. Be careful what you wish for. Just kidding. I love working with Mads. It's the right dose. I'm very businessly self-aware in the sense that I could never have a business partner. I know that about me. I will never go into a venture where I am a 50-50 partner with somebody else. And so I feel like the only type of capacity that I can work with somebody is a podcast with my sister, and that's where I draw the line.
Well, I'm a twin, and I have another sister, Amy, who I love deeply, but my twin growing up, my parents always called her Mother Teresa, and they called me Leona Helmsley, which has left deep impressions on my life that I'm still working through. And they did it. I mean, she's now a elementary ed special ed teacher in one of the lowest income school districts in New Jersey, and she's a phenomenal human being. She's really great, but yeah, it was a big shadow to grow up under her and just her kindness. But I feel like we play off of each other well, so a podcast would be fascinating.
Yeah, sisterly dynamics. Once you put two sisters behind a mic, all bets are off.
Well, so thank you for being open about your diagnosis and your mental health. And I think it's something, personally I've had experiences in my life and with loved ones around that, and my experiences have been around stigma, and you don't talk about it, and like let's not name it, let's not talk about it outside of this small group. And that really bothers me a lot, because it's a reality of our society, and it's a reality of the people we work alongside every day. When we talk about intersectionality and diversity in the workplace, we only, name the things we can see almost. And it's a lot more nuanced and complex than that. And so if you don't mind me asking, I mean, what was your journey like to become comfortable talking about this? And, what have your experiences been as you've, owned it more, and led that narrative?
Excellent question. And, when I told my story publicly about my mental health journey on the podcast, sure, it was a little nerve-wracking, but as I was as I was introducing myself, I don't really hold any more weight towards my bipolar disorder than I do for the fact that I run an agency. I don't really put one with a negative charge or one with a positive charge. It is just what it is in my life. I have never understood why I wouldn't talk about it. I think people have called me courageous for telling my story, and I say I'm not courageous because it took no bravery to do this. I didn't know that what I was doing was courageous until people told me it was. So I think there's a couple factors there. One, I was very blessed that my parents were supportive. They didn't always understand what was happening to me, but were willing to do the research to understand that what I live with is an illness. I'm not just a 17-year-old crying out for whatever attention, etc., or being rebellious. And so in that understanding, I think there was confusion, but there was never they never shut me down. They never tried to hide me. They never tried to hide it. I grew up in a really, really small community where I was definitely the only one. I think, I'm sure there was others, but I was the only one where it was quite apparent. I was going to therapy at 14 years old. All of my friends knew that I just had emotional stuff. I was just sensitive. I just had a little bit of a harder time when it came to my mental health. But when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I felt like it was a death sentence. This was 10 years ago, and Instagram wasn't really even around. The Mental Health Awareness Month, and people didn't talk about their mental illnesses or even their bouts of depression or anxiety that they went through. So when I was diagnosed, I felt as if it was this crazy, crazy thing. I was crazy. I would be crazy for the rest of my life. And I really had to forge my own path towards my own healing. I always say that those who struggle with addiction have a place to go. They have detox, then rehab, then sober living, and then the rooms, and a sponsor, and 12 steps. And when you're suffering from a mental illness like bipolar disorder, there's less of a path, less of a clear path. And so for me, the struggle wasn't talking about it. Everyone knew, I think, by default, just because my life had completely kind of collapsed on me. I had to drop out of college. I had to go into outpatient program. I was locked up on a 5150. So hiding it wasn't really an option. I couldn't hold a minimum wage job. The courageous part of all this was learning how to heal and forging my own path within that healing and taking radical responsibility over my emotions. Sharing your experience, I understand there's a stigma and it is scary, and for many people it's not safe to share their experience. But I want to flip the narrative and really, really talk about where the real courage starts with your decision to heal yourself, for your decision to show up in your life no matter what. That's where the courage starts, to say, this is what I have and I accept what I have and I will move forward regardless and turn this into the biggest strength possible. That's where the courage starts. Talking about it, unfortunately, for some reason which I cannot comprehend, is a stigma. That part wasn't so hard for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but I also think that having that type of supportive family too, matters. And I do want to call that out because I think many of our listeners, just knowing that being supportive of someone or finding support for yourself is meaningful. And there's no playbook for it, right? I think oftentimes when we're faced with someone who is going, through challenges or managing their mental health, if it's not our lived experience, we don't know how to react. We don't know what to do. We tend to back away because we don't know what to do, and just be there, just be there and be supportive.
Yeah. And I'll just add real quick, because I love a good action item. If you are suffering from your mental health and you look around and the support system around you is unfortunately not what it needs to be to really get you through this, there are free mental health support groups and resources at NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. And as Kristy, you just said, people supporting those and their loved ones. NAMI also has support groups for people who have loved ones who have mental illnesses that help them cope with how to support their loved ones as well. So
thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So Scout, you are also the author of The Emotional Entrepreneur. And I know in this book, you comprise 25 lessons to guide millennial and Gen Z women through the emotional challenges of launching, running, and scaling a business. And this is so important. I mean, as as a CEO of a business myself, who is leading through times of uncertainty, who's focused on running and growing that business, it oftentimes feels like everyone's looking at you for the answers. The weight of everything is on your shoulders, and it can be overwhelming. It's exhilarating at the same time. It's lots of ups and downs, but it's something I don't think we talk enough about. There's so much about building the financial models and the customer avatar and the cost of acquisition, but you're not talking about what is the toll of this whole experience on you of pursuing your passions and dreams. And yet also there's, other impacts as well. So tell me about this book. I mean, what was the journey for creating The Emotional Entrepreneur, and what were some of the lessons learned?
The Emotional Entrepreneur I wrote because when I started Scout's agency, much to your point, I was shocked at how emotional it was. I was shocked at how intensely it highlighted my weaknesses and my strengths equally. But the weaknesses and the insecurities, if I didn't emotionally deal with them and really, spend some time in the personal development realm and get a hold of them, would take my business down. And so through that, I scaled my agency. We did a 6-figure revenue in the first year and a multiple in the second. It wasn't because I had resources or experience in PR, which I don't have. I'm a college dropout. It was because I could emotionally handle, or I don't know if I could emotionally handle it. I was willing to emotionally handle the discomfort. And so I really was talking to a lot of other women. I run a podcast pretty much for millennial women. And I was noticing that a lot of other women weren't, they wanted to start their own business, but they weren't starting, not because they didn't have the resources or the education or even the financial means. They weren't starting it because of anxiety and imposter syndrome and fear and not being able to really comprehend what to do with uncertainty and all of those things. And so I was looking around, and there's so many books on how to balance a P&L and how to hire effectively and how to scale revenue and what percentage profit you should put on your books and all the strategic, very masculine things that make our business run. But there was nothing that was talking about the extremely emotional and uncomfortable situations that starting a business really, really creates for the owner. And so the Emotional Entrepreneur really blends my emotional experience, drawn upon a lot of the tools that I learned from healing from my bipolar disorder. And it also talks about my favorite thing in the world, which is entrepreneurship. So it's a 25 lesson guide. Every single lesson touches upon something different. So there's chapters like get an ROI on your pain. Anxiety has your back. We talk about limiting beliefs, setting a higher standard for your life, abundance versus scarcity mindset, how to believe in yourself and love yourself and celebrate yourself. So that women, when they want to start a podcast, a YouTube channel, an agency, a product-based business, whatever it is, a subscription-based, an event planning company, whatever it is, there is an emotional lesson that can support them through that growth. Because when you start a business, you put yourself out there in ways that you never even imagined were possible. You stretch yourself more than you ever thought was possible. Every new growth in your business, every new level comes with an insane amount of discomfort. And it's not about can you close the deal, right? It's about can you emotionally handle the up level? Can you emotionally handle the responsibility, the burden that goes on your shoulders, the financial responsibility for you, your team, etc. And so that's really what the Emotional Entrepreneur helps guide women through.
Is there one chapter there that resonates with you more than the others?
Yes, my favorite chapter is Get an ROI on Your Pain.
I think that's the first one you mentioned. So
yeah, it's a weird concept, but it just makes so much sense to me. I shared this story in the book, but I was on the phone with one of my closest friends, and she was having so much anxiety because she didn't like this really big aspect of her job. And to get through this aspect, she had to take medication, and it was just, she was so anxious. And so I was calling her on the way to work, and I was anxious too, because I was waiting for a client to get back to me. I didn't know if they liked something, whatever. And then I realized, I was like, we're both anxious right now. We're both uncomfortable. We're both suffering, if you will, except your suffering is keeping you stagnant or regressing you backwards towards your dreams, where my pain is pushing me forward. So it hit me that the pain and the suffering and the discomfort that we feel does not go away when we pursue our passion. But if we have to feel it regardless, you might as well have it move you forward. You might as well walk through discomfort, not because you can't walk through that office one more time, but have discomfort because you are going to invest in your book launch to launchpad your career, and that feels scary. both are uncomfortable in the body, but one is moving you forward and one is keeping you from living out your full potential. So it's this idea that living your dream, following your purpose, etc., isn't a guarantee to be free of pain and discomfort. It's actually quite the opposite. It's a lot more. But it's the fact that you're willing to walk through the fire because you understand that on the other end of the fire, if you are living your purpose, is a type of gold that, only comes from or only alchemizes through walking through pain.
I don't know if you can answer this question for me, but it's a question about perspective, because sometimes I think when we're in the thick of it, in that job or that role, we do think that maybe that's our purpose, right? That's what we're going through for that, end gain, that personal reward. But yet, in hindsight, you realize that you're deluding yourself, or you're not even, it just wasn't what you thought it was, and you don't know what you don't know. So I don't know. I mean, are there questions that someone can ask themselves to kind of level set and say, well, I think that this is my purpose, and I have so much, stress and anxiety and all of these other things around this, but how do I validate that this is the right path for me?
Beautiful question. A couple things come to mind. The first, which I should probably preface because I don't like it when this happens, is that when we talk about purpose, there is a really intense pressure to find the one thing, right? The one purpose. And in that pressure, we second guess ourselves, we doubt ourselves, we aren't fulfilled when it doesn't feel that great certain days. And if we place so much pressure, like placing the pressure of one person to fulfill all of our needs for the rest of our lives, when it falls short, you fall short. So one, it's releasing this pressure and this need to find your direct purpose. Am I living in my purpose? Yes. Is my purpose going to look different in 10 years? 100%. It's not one specific clear avenue. It's more of a lifestyle, I like to say. And I'll also say that understanding what's in alignment for you comes with life experience, comes with doing the thing that wasn't in alignment that you might have thought it was, and then afterwards you realize it's not, and then you can better get attuned into your intuition and your gut instincts and really what lights you up. I have done so many things that I thought was what I should be doing, and in hindsight it was not, and the anxiety was not healthy. The anxiety was not pushing me forward. It looked like it was, but it wasn't. And I think sometimes you have to go through those experiences to understand the difference. A very, very simple way to start honing in that muscle is, this is from Shaman Durek's book. He says, think of something that's a hell no, right? And feel it in your body. Feel what that feels like. Now think of something that's a hell yes and feel that in your body. You will have two emotional experiences, but there's a difference. There's a subtle difference, or hopefully not that subtle, between the yes and the no. And I think that's a really good way to start to hone in that muscle. But also don't put so much pressure on yourself for every decision you make to feed this grand idea of a purpose. I think we find our purpose by taking action, by trial and error, by different experiences. It's just a willingness to be introspective and look back on those experiences and take what worked for us and discard the rest.
That is all such great advice and insights. I don't know. I'm striving for the hell yes, and I love that. I love that framing, saying it like you feel it intuitively, like in your body. The hell yes, and you're like yes, and the smile and the nodding, which you can't see, but it's happening. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And can I offer one more thing?
Yes, please do.
I want to also normalize the fact that even when you are living your purpose, there will be moments where you don't want it. So a month and a half ago, I journaled and I said, I don't want my agency. I don't want my podcasts. I don't want team members. I don't want this responsibility. I don't want anything in my calendar invite ever again. What am I doing? Right? And yet I had the foresight to know that our emotions have to go through different cycles, and I needed to expend that type of energy for my body. So I didn't make it mean something so final. It's okay if you are living your purpose and your dream, and there are days where you want to run away from it. That's normal. I think you can ask any parent, about raising children. I'm not a mother, but I've heard many times, like, you love the kids, but sometimes you need a break, right? Like, it's a similar idea that you can love something so much, and yet at times it challenges you and it makes you doubt certain things. And so it's okay if you have those moments. I have them all the time. It's just about reconnecting to that hell yes and that hell no, reconnecting to your intuition, reconnecting to your alignment, and seeing the bigger picture at play.
Yeah. Well, our businesses are living and breathing, right? They're an embodiment of ourselves. And so it makes sense that, it's dynamic, it's ever changing. And sometimes, it's a lot. But then, you come back to, why you I'm going to be super cheesy and say you birthed this business in the first place. But, it's, something you've created out of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, and so talking about your business, I know you said you focus on podcast PR for women entrepreneurs, podcasters, and brands. So why podcasting? As we're on a podcast, but I must ask, why podcasting?
I think in a world where you have to grab someone's attention for 3 seconds, or it's a bit surface level, etc., podcast, it's a container where you just drop deep real quick. And I love that about it. I love the depth. I love hearing somebody's personalities, challenges, struggles, successes, storylines, etc., in a really, really long form, impactful way. As a podcaster myself, when I started OKS's podcast, I recognized very quickly, like, me and my sister were close, but now we have an hour a week, sometimes 2 hours a week, where we put our phones away, where we look each other in the eye, and we record a purposeful conversation around a specific topic. Those conversations have transformed our relationship, and they've transformed our careers. They've transformed relationships we have to other female entrepreneurs that have been introduced into our lives because of the podcast. It's changed our lives through the community that we've cultivated. And so I think in a world where we're looking for depth and yet only find shallow waters, podcasting provides that kind of that nourishment for the soul when it comes to communicating and storytelling and the humanness behind what we do.
And for our listeners who maybe want to get on, we're first going to start with getting on a podcast, and we can quickly talk about starting one. But for those who may be interested in getting on a podcast, I know I've talked to a number of business owners and executives who want to hear their voice heard, who want to talk about their passion and what they're creating. What are some of the ways that they would do that outside of? Definitely the first and foremost is working with Scout's agency, but are there other tips you would offer?
Yeah, it's our bread and butter at Scout's agency. It's the thing I believe in with all of my heart, that not only what I said earlier, being a guest on a podcast is deep and intimate, it also, I have seen time and time again, provide the most ROI for my clients as far as getting in front of new audiences, exposure, PR, all the things. So whenever someone comes to me and they're like, I want to tell my story, I want to sell my book, I want to be more visible, I want to come out behind my business and be the founder, it's a podcast tour for me. So the podcast tour, now that I've run, I don't even know how many, we've booked almost 700 podcast interviews in the last 2.5 years. The podcast tour comes with a lot of really understanding who you are and what you have to give as far as value to a podcast episode. It's a lot of putting yourself out there. It's a lot of cold emailing, cold pitching, getting really comfortable doing that. With that, I actually made a whole course, Get Yourself as a Guest on Podcast. And that's basically takes our podcast tour, which is, we've got our whole proprietary system down. It's a very well-oiled machine, and places it into, I think there's 7 lessons that you walk through so that you can learn how to run your own podcast tour.
Excellent. That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
And what is podcasting, being a podcast host, meant for you?
Oh my God. Everything. If you open up my book, The Emotional Entrepreneur, every single lesson is opened by an original quote from another female entrepreneur, whether she's a content creator, reality TV star, more traditional business owner, etc. And every single one of them I interviewed on OK Sis. My entire network is because of OK Sis. Every single guest we've had on that podcast, we've welcomed them into our community. We've cheered them on. We've supported them. We've kept up with them. And in return, when I launched my book, they were standing behind me. They have introduced me to clients. It has grown my agency over here. It's grown my book sales over there. Being a podcast host, I always say, if you don't have the long-term vision and time commitment to do it, do a podcast tour for yourself. But if you are really looking for a way to develop your voice over time in one central location, to grow your network, I always say podcasting is a scam, okay? In no other world can you DM your girl crush, your role model, whatever it is, and say, hey, can you go to coffee with me, or can I take you to dinner? They're going to say no, right? But if you ask them to be a guest on your podcast, all of a sudden they're in your calendar. It's the ultimate networking game. So for the woman who really wants to build out her network in her industry and create really, really substantial connections with people that might take her, in other words, 5-10 years to meet, starting a podcast is a beautiful, beautiful way to build that network while developing a community of brand evangelists who, when you launch things and excel in your career, will be there to support you.
Expertly said. Thank you, Scout. And I wanted to end our conversation just learning a little bit more about you. So I'm going to ask you some questions. If you would humor me and answer, what is your favorite day of the week?
Monday.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Your dream dinner guest?
Oh my God, I just had this yesterday. I was like, this is my dream dinner guest. And obviously I forget about it already. Wow, this is really going to bother me. So I guess I'll have to think of somebody else. My dream dinner guest, Whitney Wolf Herd from Bumble.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear her stories. Do you have any pet peeves?
Yes, when people get the hiccups.
Really?
Yeah, it drives me absolutely insane. When my husband has the hiccups, I'm like, you need to get away from me immediately. Or maybe it's just when my husband has the hiccups, that might be it.
Does he get the hiccups frequently?
No, but when he does, we're always stuck in a car together and it drives me insane.
So, and Catherine, our producer, may cut this part, but when I used to frequent happy hour more, we used to go to this bar on the Lower East Side, and the bartender, every time someone would get the hiccups, he would take a lit match, put it out in a shot glass of water, and then have you chug the shot glass. And there was something about, I don't know what's in a match, like the sulfur or something in the water that would stop your hiccups. And it worked more often than not.
Okay, I'm Googling that. I don't know if I can get that in the car where it usually happens for me, but I'm going to Google that.
Just carry some matches around.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite recent read?
A favorite recent read? Right now I'm doing something off-brand. I'm reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is a more kind of like entertainment
so good.
novel.
So good.
And I don't understand. It's like television. It's that gripping. But other than that, I just read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I think that's his last name. And it's an absolutely breathtaking book.
I'm going to Google that. But yeah, I just read The 7 Husbands or whatever it is. And sorry, I should honor this because it's a great book.
Oh my God. I can't. I don't want it to end.
It's pretty good. It was a good read. It was something I need. I feel like during these times, like I just need something that's going to make me smile and be entertained. So I appreciated it.
Yeah.
And do you have a final thought you want to leave with our listeners here today?
My final thought is always that you are safe in your emotions, and through your emotional resiliency will come your dreams.
Perfect. Well, Scout, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And come back next week where we'll be interviewing Kristen Shaughnessy, former New York One anchor, and just a great interview talking about the impact of media on storytelling, on opinions, and the need for diverse representation in media as well.
Can I just say I love Kristen. She's so great. Yeah. That'll be a great conversation, I'm sure.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.